And now your mama knows.
All right, guys, thank you for tuning in once again. This is Anthony L. Lewis on the Now Your Mama Knows YouTube channel. And I've been wanting to do something different. I have a lot of collaborations with a lot of people, special people in my life, like my wife. So on Thursday nights live on YouTube, I do a show with my wife, which is the Sandy and Anthony show, and it's a lot of fun. It's craziness. My wife tell crazy jokes. We have a skit where she's Daisy and I'm Duke. You guys will love it. Check it out. Also, I got a show that I do with my boy Big Mike, and we call it BigMike.LittleAnt. We do movie reviews. We plan on going to restaurants when the pandemic is over. We're going to review food and a lot of stuff. I even got a gaming show that comes on every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. called AllPurposeChamp&Crew with my buddy Just Joe and Bones. Check it out. I do a podcast called Mental Theater with a couple of guys. We talk about movies and stuff like that. I do a podcast with my boys that was my close friends. We grew up together called the Mighty Jade Empire. It's usually about 9 of us. So all that stuff is cool. But I say that to say this. I had a conversation with a buddy of mine, Lamont, which is going to join in a moment. And we wanted to talk about religion, right? So we wanted to talk about the subject that people skate away from. And I believe we are both two intelligent guys that we can have a good discussion. So I thought, okay, let's do a new show, but we didn't want it to be a show that continually goes on. So I figured, you know what? I'll do a one-off show and that's it. But then I thought, what if I start a new show where I come to you guys? So if you're watching, you could comment below and say, hey, I want to be on the show, and I'll make a show with just you. But what I want to do is promote you. So if you do anything from here, if you do gaming, if you're a DJ, if you sell stuff, you do network marketing, I want to take what you have to offer to the world and do an episode with you. And if you don't even have anything that you want to share and you just want to talk about a subject, it could be anything, then I want to talk to you. So I decided to call the show So Let's Talk. So with that said, I'm going to bring Lamont on, and then we are going to talk it up. So here we go. So Lamont, it's a pleasure having you on here. I wanted you to personally be the first guest because it all started with you and me talking about we want to do something, you know, bringing up the dreaded religion talk. But again, you made it, clear that you don't have as much time. So I figured, okay, we start off, but with just a one-off and see where it goes. But I had to have you as the first guest because of you, I wouldn't have thought of doing the new show. So let's talk. So with that said, knowing that we're going into the uncharted territory that people usually have an issue with, I believe you and I are both intelligent men, and we can have a good conversation, discussion, even maybe a debate about religion. So start it off, because I know you had some questions, and you could go into your whole story with religion and where you are and where you started, and you could ask me questions, and let's go from there.
Okay. Well, again, thanks for just doing the show. It's been a while. I always thought about doing a show like this, but it's always easier having another person to do a show.
Yeah.
But I guess I could just start off with my position where it comes to religion. I consider myself an atheist. I do not believe in any gods. I wasn't always an atheist. I kind of grew up going to church. My parents used to take me to church when I was like a small kid. To a certain age that I was to the point where I didn't want to go to church anymore, because it was like Sunday morning cartoons, and I think I was just too young to really care about what they were saying in the church.
So did they not have children's church? They had you in like the regular adult church?
Yeah, my parents just went to the regular Sunday service type of church. I'm pretty sure they probably had some type of Sunday school or something, or I don't know. Maybe at that particular church it was just Sunday service, and they probably have stuff during the week. But we only, as far as I know, my parents only had me go on a Sunday.
Right. Yeah, I'm just trying to make it clear. So like, because a lot of churches you'll go in And at the
Mhm.
same time you go in, somebody would take your kid from you to Sunday to like children's church. So that way the children won't be disrupting the
I
adults. And
see.
plus children, they'll break it down a little lower level for them or make it fun or maybe give them snacks. But I guess in your case, you was sitting there as a kid listening to the actual stuff that adults are listening to. So for you, it probably was just flying over your head. So that's what
Yeah,
you're saying?
yeah. It wasn't really paying attention. You just sitting there, just trying to kill time. And it could have just been that time when I was growing up. It's just they didn't think that was important at that particular church. But that was like probably over 30 something years ago.
Right.
When I was going to church. And every Sunday, my mom used to fight with me, getting dressed, putting church shoes on, and the shoes always hurting my feet and stuff. And it was just like a whole big uncomfortable experience. And then I think my mom just got tired of like fighting with me, and just only time I really had to go is like on a holiday, like Easter or something like that. It's almost like a requirement if I wanted to go out to eat and stuff. So for the most part, growing up, even though when I was younger, I was kind of made to go to church, it never really stuck with me, and I never really had a good experience when I went.
Right.
And when I was had the opportunity not to go, it was just very relieving that I didn't have to go anymore. I just kind of wanted to hang out and watch TV and just did what I wanted to do.
Right.
Um,
You think so was that before you met me? So what's cool is we met in the 3rd grade.
yeah.
So you think that was before you met me? Because I'm trying to remember. I don't think I remember you going to church.
Yeah, it was before I met you. It's probably, if I had to guess, my mom probably started making me go like in 1st grade.
Okay, got you.
And it wasn't a forced thing to go. So yeah, it was probably right before, because I know that growing up we used to talk about a lot of cartoons and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was before then.
Okay.
And just growing up, I kind of believed in God, but I never really understood the whole point or anything like that. It's almost like telling a kid Santa Claus is real.
Right.
You don't really think about it that much. You just, from what everybody's telling you, that it's just something that's real. It wasn't till I became an adult, and I guess my first marriage, it wasn't really during the marriage when I met my girlfriend. Eventually, she became my wife, and things kind of got rough. We was kind of living together, and it was during that time where America Online had their chat rooms, and it was like the most popular thing. Everybody was on the chat rooms and stuff like that. And I decided to go check out the religious chat rooms.
Okay.
And once I got in there, it was like a Christian room. It was just people talking and stuff. And I just seen people like cussing out God in those rooms. And I was like shocked, like, what? Somebody saying that about God? And I was like,
well, so
watch out,
let me back up a little bit. Let me back up a little bit. So since we knew each other from 3rd grade, I remember being little, and we know little kids, we walk in our street cursing, but if we walk past the church, we wouldn't curse.
Oh,
so it's
yeah.
funny, but yeah, I remember like, oh, we wait, then we get past the church. so we grew up like knowing that God exists. Like for me, I felt like I didn't grow up going to church, so I didn't really like believe. I just felt like people say it's real, but I didn't have like a stake in the ground. Like I didn't really go like you did,
Yeah.
So I just want to throw that in there because it goes, your timeline. You went from a kid and then you went from when you got married. I want to throw that in there that you was like you believed in God, but you wasn't like actively like this super Christian,
Yeah. If somebody came up to me and questioned me my reasons, I would not have like a good argument. I didn't even think there was like people was like debating it at that time. I just thought it was, hey, there was a God as far as my little world. And it's crazy how we did those little things. Every time we walked past the church, we wouldn't cuss or anything like that. I'm not sure why we came up with that, but that's just something we just did. But yeah, once I got into America Online, was in the chat rooms. I was like, I see a lot of people was kind of debating and arguing, and I just thought it was kind of fascinating. I met up with some people online, and they was talking about God real name, and I didn't really know God had a name. Right. They were just talking about Yahweh and all this other stuff, and and then they was using the Bible and using scriptures and kind of using like Revelations to talk about the stuff that happened in Revelations as far as like history and prophecies and stuff like that. And at that time, it just kind of blew my mind, and just how things was, it was kind of linking things up, and it's like, wow, I just thought it was like, it's kind of confirmed my beliefs even more. And it was like, you know what, maybe I should take this a little bit more serious, because I know I wanted to go to heaven and all the other stuff.
Right.
So we kind of started to read the Bible and do a bunch of studying.
So you on your own, or you and your wife?
Just on my own. Me,
Okay.
my wife at the time, we were just having a horrible time. It was a bad time as far as us not really getting along. And I just kind of used that time to try to, I guess, get to know myself a little bit. I'm not sure, I guess you would say get to know myself. It was just a bad time that I just kind of sunk into the online chat type of stuff.
Gotcha.
And that was like my outlet to just get away from my troubles. So she wasn't really, I think she believed in God, but she wasn't going to church or anything like that. And it wasn't really that serious. It was almost like a casual thing, just like how we was kind of casual about our belief in God. So, I mean, I started studying the Bible, kind of taking it a lot more serious. It was praying a lot more, just doing a lot of research and stuff. And the group online, it was like a little small little community thing we was doing online. And we was debating other Christians and stuff like that. And during that time frame, I kind of learned somewhat a good amount. I know I learned a lot about the Bible. I've read the Bible completely, and I was like able to quote different scriptures and verses just straight out of my head. I can't do that now because it's been a long time since I read it.
Right. Yeah.
But then just in those religious chat rooms, I realized there was other religions there. There was like people who was believing paganism. There was Islam. And all that other stuff just kind of blew my mind that all these other people still kind of believed in this stuff. I just thought that was like stuff is old and nobody really took that seriously as far as the paganism.
Right.
And once I looked at the creed, I think I found like some type of pagan creed that said, do as you will, as less just harm nobody. And I thought that was pretty interesting. Like they didn't really believe in hurting nobody. Just kind of doing whatever you want, as long as it doesn't hurt anybody.
Right.
And once I realized about there's other religions that other people would study in or believed in, it just kind of made me kind of open up and was interested in learning about other religions and stuff like that. And then from there, I think during that time frame, I think you was in Job Corps, and your friend Matt was a hardcore Christian before you went to Job Corps, and then y'all was coming back. I think y'all was coming back on the weekends or something.
Yeah. We was residents, so we lived there Monday through Friday and came home on the weekends. We came home on Friday night, and then we had to go back Sunday night.
Okay. And I remember when y'all came back, and especially Matt, he was talking about the 5%ers there. They was getting in debates and stuff, and getting all these heated debates, and he was giving me books and stuff that they was talking about. Like I decided, since I was kind of interested in studying religion, I was like decided to check it out, whatever. I'm not sure what was your thing when you was in there. Like I know you wasn't really into that type of group, but you was kind of.
Yeah, no, I wasn't. Yeah, I was there for electrical wiring. He went there for accounting, and I was kind of have my own little group. I never got into the whole 5%er thing. I just didn't have a stand on religion at all. So I just was like, cause I never really went to church. My mom, we probably went to church like maybe 3 times for Easter. So like I didn't have, so I just didn't want to be bothered by it. I just, but yeah, I remember in Job Corps, he got really into it, so he was a diehard Christian, but he was, talking and listening a lot to what, the 5%er thing.
Yeah. I remember that. Yeah. So, once Matt got into the 5%er, he kind of left Christianity and was talking about the black man is God and all the other stuff. like the books he was giving me was like, I was reading the book he was giving me, and it was kind of like fascinating. It was books talking about aliens and they coming down, and we was kind of, people was looking at them as like gods and stuff like that. And the stories that kind of intrigued me, and just to kind of learn about civilizations and ancient civilizations and what they believed and their gods. And during that time frame, it kind of had me questioning about my beliefs. So I was like looking at all these other religions and beliefs from the past, and we're just saying like, okay, what makes mine so much different than all these other ones that we look at as myths?
Right.
So in a nutshell, I just kind of put religion on the back burner and start learning them just about history and learning different stuff about history. And I guess during that phase, you could kind of say I didn't really believe in God. I'm not sure if I was calling myself an atheist, but I know I didn't really believe in the God, at least the God of the Bible. But everything else was just kind of like wide open as far as like any other supernatural things I kind of still clung on to, as far as like psychics and possibly aliens and all the other stuff that kind of interests me. And I think during that time frame, when you was in Florida, you got really hooked up into the church and stuff like that.
Yeah.
When it came to religion. And it was almost like I was transitioning out of church and you was like kind of going into the belief in God and stuff like that.
So let me just throw that in there. So when I went to Florida, so I went to Florida for advanced training. So I went to Job Corps, completed, had advanced training, and they had a job, an apartment waiting for me. So I drove down there, found my job, found the apartment, got situated. Well, the guy who was my boss said, hey, do you want to come to my church? And I was like, I don't know anybody, I'm new, whatever. I didn't believe in God, but I'll go. Wait, let me back up a little bit. So there was a short period of time where I believe before I even went to Job Corps, me and my kid's mom, my ex-wife, we used to do those little Bible studies. I don't even know how we met these people, but it was like a couples, and they used to come to our house, and we would, when I lived on 280 Hamilton, we used to have a little Bible studies. That didn't last long at all, but I guess it was a little window, and I guess I went back to that was me trying to believe, like, is there a God? And it was interesting to me. And then I guess it just, whatever. I forgot why we stopped. So then when I went to Florida and I started going to that guy's church, it was just something to do. I don't think I necessarily was, again, fully into it, but I just wanted to be a part of something because I'm social and I didn't know anybody. So then when I left, and then I guess I eventually stopped even going to that when I was still in Florida. So when I left Florida, came back, I just came back to, all right, whatever, there is no God. So then you could jump back in.
Okay. Yeah, so I kind of went through like a phase where I didn't really believe. I guess you could say eventually I became an atheist, but I still kind of had doubt. I kind of had hope for like other beliefs and stuff like that. But I just didn't think that there was like an all-powerful, all-knowing, super powerful God that sees everything and can do anything he wants, that was looking over everybody. Because when I was doing like just like looking at history and just like all the bad things that happened in history, just from like the transatlantic slave trade, just a whole lot of horrible things that happened. And to me, at that time, I was like, there was some good God out there. There's no reason why this stuff would have happened. Because the way I look at it, if I had the power and I could stop something, I could save somebody or help somebody, I would do whatever I could to help somebody. Even though I didn't believe in a God, is religion and studying religion just kind of became my thing to do. I just kind of like to talk about religion,
right?
And just having discussions about religion. And I used to kind of have debates with people online about it. So pretty much during that phase, I just didn't really care about religion. I didn't care about if somebody believed it or not. Every time I used to date somebody, to just let people know it from the beginning of my relationships that I didn't believe. That if you want to, you do what you got to do, whatever. I'm not going to stop you or say that you shouldn't do what you that you shouldn't believe. And yeah, that's in a nutshell, that's how it kind of went. And I think some of my obstacles as being an atheist and having kids is I wasn't sure what route I should go as far as raising my kids as far as religion. I didn't want to push my beliefs on them, but I didn't really want them to necessarily believe in a God and tell them that they should believe in a God, something that I don't believe in. So I was kind of a little bit torn with that, whether I should tell them about my beliefs. And my kids was going to like a choir, a Catholic choir for like the after school program and singing in the choir. And I think I waited until they was a little bit older, probably when my son was like in 2nd or 3rd grade. And I told him my stance on not believing in God. I think my son, which was the youngest at the time, he kind of shifted once he really thought about it and thought about what I was saying. He kind of went my route as far as not believing in God. My oldest daughter, she heard what I said, but I think she still kind of believe in God. I think if I asked her today, she would say that she believes in some type of God. But with my own kids, I never forced them to go to church or anything like that. I never stopped them if they wanted to go to church.
Right.
And then I think, I guess we could kind of get back on your story as far as explaining to everybody how you got back into the church.
Yep. So I came back from Florida, and this was in 2000. And I just, had my stance. Well, I had my few run-ins with church and God. My grandma, my family's from Jamaica, and it's a big Christianity is a big thing. So she always wanted me to believe, but I just felt it just didn't make sense. And because my mom never really pushed it on me, I just never had that feeling of I cared so much. And even when I tried to get into it, I think my issue is I try to look at things logically, and having Bible study and reading the Bible, you see stories. We could just leave it on Genesis. You don't even have to come out of Genesis. And there's stuff that's just so over the top and strange and sounds far-fetched that is like somebody's living to be 900 years old. Somebody, just stuff walking on water, just a lot of stuff. No, walking on water is a little bit down, but it didn't make sense to me. So I didn't care. And even as a kid, I remember I used to say, God, I believe God and all that is fake, but at least the people who are into church are because I used to just look and think they're like goody two shoes. They're at least the people in society trying to make things better, right? Because I thought I didn't look at kids that I knew who went to church and maybe they act like me, they act bad or whatever. I just thought like, oh, well, maybe their parents, older people that go to church are these really goody people and they're trying to make the world better. So I could care less about it, but hey, I'm happy for them. So my ex-wife, I married her in 2009, and I didn't believe, but she was a believer. And so she never forced it on me. But before we got married, they wanted her pastor to marry us. So we had to go to her church, and it had to do like a little, talk with us and everything. And I had to say, look, I don't believe. And he had to do some studies with me to let me know, not to try to convert me, but let me know why it's important. The marriage is important to have to do with God. So, I was like, okay, whatever. Didn't care at all. And I just never got into it. I never went to church with her. I sat home on Sundays playing video games. She went to church. So we get a divorce. Years go by. I meet my wife that I'm with now. And funny enough, her ex-boyfriend's mom was still close with her. And she was going to a church. And at the time, I was in network marketing. I was trying to make money. So I actually went to a couple churches just trying to present my business to them, hoping that if the pastor get involved, then everybody in the congregation to get involved, and then I can make a lot of money. So I literally went to 3 churches, and the 4th church was the one that my wife now, ex-boyfriend's mom went to, and she said, listen, if you want me to listen to your pitch, come to church on and then I'll listen to you. It was like, be fair. Hey, if you come to church, then I'll listen to your thing. Cool. Went to church, and her pastor was a younger guy. He might have been like 2 or 3, 4 years older than me. And he was real charismatic, and he was, you know, a showman, right? And I liked that. I'm like, okay, I like this dude. I never forget it. His sermon that he talked about that day was, you have to be mature to receive your blessing. So his analogy was, a mother wouldn't give her 10-year-old child the car keys because they would crash the car. So, what's up, man? So, hey, could you close my door for me? Thanks. So, yeah. So for me, I was like, logically, that makes a lot of sense. So all his illustrations made a lot of sense. So I really got into it. And then his son does Christian rap. So son was rapping. I'm like, oh man, that's pretty. I didn't even know you could rap. What? You could rap in church? So that kind of swayed me in. So then that was just one time we went, and I told my kids about it. And my kids were teenagers. I said, you might like this church. They said, you went to church? I said, oh no, it's kind of cool. So I had my kids come. They seen the Christian rapping. They was like, whoa, this is cool. So we decided, we liked it. Let's give it a try. Not that I believed, but I liked it, and it was cool. So I was receptive to it. And then I started believing, like, let me really try to open my heart up and believe, could God be real? So my thing was, I believed there was a God, right? Because there was something above me, but I had a hard time believing in Jesus. Just dying, coming back to life 3 days later. I like sci-fi, science fiction movies. I was always into science. I believed in the Big Bang. That just sounds too science fiction. So time went on, and I was like, reading the Bible, doing Bible study, and like, man, I haven't real understanding what faith is, you know, believing in something that you can't see. You just give your faith to it. And I figure if I believe in God, I'm believing Jesus because of the Trinity. So I started believing God and really got into it. And I'm one of these people. I'm either here or I'm here. And so I got way into church. And I challenged myself to read the Bible in 1 year. In 6 months, I was the operations officer for the church. So when they did meetings, I was kind of like the host and like kept the format. Next thing you know, I was doing like praying for everybody. I was eventually I became a trustee. Like I got, you name it. We ended up getting married at the church. My wife ended up becoming a children's teacher. Like we went all the way out. So that was my thing. But at that church, I'll say this. The style was different for me. So, quote unquote, I just keep it clean. I don't have to go into the whole thing, but the church was different for me. It was more of a black church. My kids were mixed, and my wife is white. I don't have kids with her, but I had kids with my first wife, and she's Spanish. So we were into the church, but it was more like, you know, the pastor was real, kind of like aggressive. Like I remember one time I talked to a friend of mine's at work. And I said, I don't know, man, the church, it kind of bothers me a little bit. And, you know, the way he kind of talked to some of the people, he's like, what? Man, in my church, listen, one time the pastor climbed over the seats. He knocked off Sister Marie, wig fell off. Like, that's just normal. And for me, I'm like, I always thought when I didn't believe in God, and mind you, when I started going to church and fully believed in God, I was 36 years old. So for 36 years, I didn't really believe in God. So, and I had the illusion that church people was like the super nice people, goody two-shoes. So now I got into a church. I'm like, man, they worse than the people that's outside. But not realizing people are people. They're human. I can't think because they go to church, they're supposed to be all saints, right? Like, oh, yeah, we're super. We don't never say bad words, blah, blah, blah. So I got kind of jaded. And then it kind of got personal for us, stuff that was coming from the pulpit to us, right, from the pastor. So we decided we were going to take one Sunday off and go to a different church and pray on it and see how we felt. So we skipped one Sunday, and we went there for like 3.5 years, and we may have missed maybe 12 days. I mean, we were faithful in all them years. Wow. So we went, prayed on it. I wrote a letter saying that we were leaving the church. I told myself after service, I'm gonna give it to our pastor. But I said, if we go to church and we pray as we're praying in our church, right? So we skipped 1 week, felt we didn't want to be there, but we're gonna go anyway and pray on it. If we're at service, we felt, you know what, God is saying, stay there. We would rip this letter up and call it a wrap. So we went there, prayed, and it was like the craziest thing. Usually everybody's called to the altar at the end of service. It was really weird. I felt God was telling me. We went, and in the first 10 minutes, he called everybody to come to the pulpit and pray. And he was really extra aggressive that day. And just the way he is. A lot of people could be like, oh, I get it. And that's fine, because that was his style, right? He was no nonsense. He used to be in the military, right? So anyway, he was just really aggressive. They called everybody to service and to prayer early in the beginning of service after 10 minutes. And he literally said these words: it's some of you that shouldn't even be here. It's some of you that I don't want you to be here. It's some of you that God got a better place for you. And we was like, that's our sign. So the only thing changed was, instead of me giving the paper to him, the letter at the end of service, he used to have a lot of people that would crowd around him at the end. You know, they wanted to talk to him and stuff. Hey, let me ask you a question, Pastor. And he would stay late and answer questions. I felt, because he's a younger guy, we're close in age, he was in the military, I felt it might have been disrespectful to give that to him in front of people. And I didn't want to cause a scene. So since I was, I had keys to the office and everything, I figured, you know what? Later on at night, I'll go to the office and I'll leave my keys and everything and the letter on the desk and leave it like that. So I left my letter, everything, and then we were pretty much done with the church. We started going to the other church, but at that point, the other church was huge. So this church was a small church. The other church, I felt, I didn't want to, people would guess say you felt like you were burnt by the church, whatever you want to call it. My new stance was, we just want to go, praise and worship, hear the word of God, and leave. I don't want to know nobody's name. I don't want to know my name. I ain't trying to be cool. I ain't trying to pick a chair up. I ain't trying to go to extra services. I'm just out. So we went there, and we pretty much kept it like that. Like, people was really friendly, really nice, but we didn't want to have anything to do with any programs. We wouldn't call ourselves a member. We just kind of went to their church, but we never became an actual member. They actually have classes for you to go to become a member. And I remember us going to one class, and we just like, we're just not ready to be a member, so we never committed. So eventually we just stopped going to that church. And over time, we just stopped going to church in general. So the cool thing is, I always told myself, I wouldn't, I promised myself and God that I would, Romans, so like you said, it's been a while, so I'm trying to quote it. But Romans 6:18, no, something 16. See?
Okay. Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
Yeah. I told myself that that I wouldn't be ashamed to share the gospel. So, like, I remember I was on the phone with one of my friends, and she stopped believing in God. And she was like, and nowhere in the Bible does it even tell you to go to church. So I promised myself that if I have a conversation and learning what I learned, I will at least bring it up. I won't stay quiet. And I said, well, I'll say this. Hebrews 10:25 say, thou shalt not forsake the assembly. I would like to say in the 2000s, the assembly probably means church. So I interpreted that part of the Bible, that one verse was telling you that you should go to church. And if you go into it, it just said that you should be around like-minded people. It helps your walk with Christ. So I was on my stance of, you know, if I'm at the diner and somebody's over there talking and I feel like he's misquoting the Bible as far as my interpretation, because again, it's all interpretation. I'm not going to get up and go over there and say, hey, man, listen. But if somebody close to me or were talking to me, I would at least bring it up to them and tell them my stance. So that was me in church, my run-in with church, 3.5 years. A lot of way more good came than harm. I never was planning on marrying my wife. I married her at the church. You know, my mom and I wasn't close at all. We didn't have a Thanksgiving dinner for about 15 years, some of which she did live in Florida. But when she moved back to Jersey, I just wasn't close with her. Worked things out with my mom. My daughter, I left her life when she was 3 months old. And because of church, I came back in her life when she was 9. She lived with me to this day. I got full custody. So a lot of good came out of going to church and turning my life over to Christ. So that's my journey with church, from me being or believing in God, going to church, and no longer going to church. So I leave it there. And if you like, you can ask some questions, and we can actually talk about religion and what it means to us, and what's our perspective on it. So
I guess I got a couple questions. I guess regarding when you was going to that church.
Right.
I I know you was your level of commitment when you kind of commit to certain things, you kind of go full in. There's just like rumors is that the church was almost like a cult type of setting.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if it was your own doing or not, but I was just kind of getting like understanding that you didn't really want to be bothered with anybody that wasn't a part of like that church setting.
Right.
You was like kind of cutting people off. I think it was a real big thing with the wedding.
Okay.
Is that some people wanted to be a part of the wedding, and they feel that I wasn't too clear if it was the pastor telling you this or just something that you just felt that yourself that you just needed to do it for yourself in order to.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. So yeah, I'll explain. So part of me being me, I'm either here or I'm here. I was here, and so for me, I felt that, which was cool. It's a great question. So some people, I am like when I used to go to the club, right? In the world, we say I invited everybody. You know me. I'm trying to get the world to come. I'm a party person. I want everybody to enjoy and everybody to be a part of it. So when I started going to church, I changed in the club shoes for the church shoes, and I invited everybody to church, and a lot of people went. What they did notice was stuff that I didn't notice because I was on the inside. Is that the way the pastor at the time, his personality and the way he spoke to people, it didn't come off the way people received it positively. So I can say eventually I saw that, and that is what bothered me, because I went into it like, oh, everybody's goody two shoes and everybody should be great. And I saw that real life isn't like that on the church side. So the cult aspect, people probably think is because he felt that there should be a certain level of you keeping things in-house in order for you to grow. So that was his stance. What my stance was, because I was all the way here, the thing that comes across to some of my people when they friends where they probably felt I was cutting them off was I'm like this, and I experimented. So when I decided I didn't want to go to church anymore, I literally took it serious, right? I went to the point, as far as you know me, I'm the clubbing guy. I told myself I didn't want to club anymore. I didn't want to curse anymore. And I was probably one of the most foul-mouthed persons you know, growing up.
Yeah.
This is just how we was. So what I realized was, I told my kids, if you hear me cursing, point it out to me, because I cursed for so long, I couldn't tell when I was cursing or not. So I had to have somebody to help me accountable, or at least point it out, because that's how it helped me. Now, I'm still Anthony. I could still chill with my peoples. So I would still hang out. So I tested it. I would hang out with my friends, and I personally wasn't strong enough to be the Anthony I wanted to be and hang out with my friends that was still would bring out the Anthony that I used to be.
Okay.
So what happened was, my pastor didn't tell me, but I told myself I had to love them from a distance for enough time in order for me to fully change myself, where I was strong enough to not allow myself to be the old Anthony when I was around my friends. I would get around them and be like, mother effer and whatever, and it was cool, you know, because I was still me, so they loved it. I would try to not curse and, you know, but I couldn't do it. I realized it was just 36 years of me being me. You couldn't compare that with the few years of going to church. And at that time, I didn't want to curse, was probably like a year in. So I had to, they would probably say I cut them off, but I had to love them from a distance in order to change. Eventually, I was able to hang out with anybody, and I just wasn't cursing because I transformed myself. I literally took those words out of my vocabulary. So because it was in their vocabulary, it didn't pull it out of mine. So, but I could understand friends felt some type of way. Now, on to my wedding, I personally felt, my pastor didn't, but I was radical. I was up here. So I felt that every one of my groomsmen, for me, had to be someone who went to church, because I felt that I needed them to pray for me and hold me accountable to make sure I was going to focus on being the husband that I wanted to be, and I felt God wanted me to be. So I needed people who was in my inner circle that day, standing next to me, that if I was getting out of line, they were going to tell me about it, but more importantly, they was going to pray on my behalf to God, that God would help keep me straight. Because I felt that in my last marriage, my wife, who was super in the church and I wasn't, I was just doing whatever, and nobody was holding me accountable. You know, I was able to call my friends and be like, yo, bro, I'm about to whatever. And they was like, yeah. So I felt that I was wanted to be away from that. And I knew my flaws because I'm human, and I knew I could have the same flaws. But if I had a group of guys that was close to me and held me accountable and prayed for me, that's what I wanted. So I get my friends who I didn't want to be in my wedding because I said, listen, bro, if you don't go to church, and that comes off wrong, and I get it. But if you was a believer and you heard me say, man, that dude is pretty radical, that he wanted his groomsmen. And also I told all my groomsmen that day on my wedding, you had to also come to church with me. If you ain't come to church with me, then you couldn't be in my wedding. Like, I was so serious. I needed y'all to be there with me spiritually because I know I'm human and I know I fell in the past, and this is my third marriage. So I already know I've been here and been there, and I needed people to pray for me when they see me get out of line. So I probably never fully explained that to my friends, or maybe I did, and obviously we see differently. I see on this end, they see on that end. So for them, it's just like, yo, Ant's in a cult. He don't even want his friends to be in his wedding. I had, one of my friends I knew when I was a little kid before I met you, and I know it burnt him out, or he felt some type of way because he was never in any of my other weddings. So I know he took it, he took offense to it. But yeah, that's pretty much in a nutshell. Now, the cult thing, my old pastor did have certain stuff, and it came off a certain way where he felt like I will post things on Facebook from, let's say, a different pastor, and he will feel some type of way because he always felt if God is blessing you in one house, he wants you to keep things coming from that house, and that's how he's going to bless you. A lot of people probably won't agree with that, and a lot of people will believe that sound codish. Like, if your friends don't go to church, you shouldn't talk to them. If your friends are acting crazy, don't be a part of what they're doing. That's how he felt. He would call himself radical. He would often say, if Jesus got nailed to the cross, is that not radical? But you will go to the movies, you will sit in the movies for 3 hours, but you don't want to come to church. So he would say stuff like that. And I would think like, man, you got a point. I'll go to this movie for 3 hours, but I'll say like, oh man, church is boring, whatever. So I get where he was coming from and his analogies and how radical he was. And so for me, being that I'm either here or here, I felt like, man, I get it. And so I had to be radical. Not that he told me to do those things, but that I was feeling that his teachings made sense to me, where I could logically feel like, okay, I could do all these radical things, like not go to church, not go to the club, stop cursing, only want my groomsmen to go to church and have to go to church with me on the day, and blah, blah, blah. So those are things you probably never knew, but you did hear somebody else's side, And I understand their side, because looking on the outside, looking in and not knowing everything, you would think like, man, Anthony's brainwashed. Why would he? Dude, I knew him since we was in elementary school, and he don't want me to be in his wedding. So I get it.
Yeah. I think it definitely came off that way. Yeah, and I think as far as I can remember at the time, I probably have some other stuff going on. I think I did try to reach out to you, but I'm not sure if I ever questioned you or anything.
Right.
I just figured that you're doing your thing. I'm not going to be too much of, like, I was hearing stuff, but I didn't want to cause any other problems or anything like that. And I know how you are, is either when you go in, you like kind of go all the way in. So I wasn't too sure if it was just you going all the way in, or it was just your pastor telling you, hey, this is, if you're going to be a Christian or be a part of the church, this is the way you're supposed to do it.
Right.
And I wasn't too sure, because I think a couple of times I talked to you, I feel like you was just telling me about your pastor more than about the Jesus or anything else.
Right. I think a lot of people mention that. They were like, oh, why are you always bringing him up? I'm gonna give credit where credit is due, guy. And he would say a lot of stuff that I believed, and I felt like, man, that was pretty good. So when I talk to people, I often say, oh, he said this, he said that. I'm just one of those people. Like, if you told me something, I'm gonna be like, oh, Lamont said. Like, that was always me. So I don't want people to feel like, oh, came from me. So I think I often brought him up because he was a huge part of my life at the time. So I wanted to give, quote unquote, credit where credit was due.
Yeah, I can understand that. And I could definitely see how, I guess the way you kind of went about that, could kind of look like it's kind of cultish, because a lot of times when people talk about they're going to the church or be a Christian, everybody say, okay, if you talk anything about other than Jesus, then something else must be going on.
Right.
And that's like the conception that sometimes gets portrayed, that people kind of put their faith in the pastor and not in the belief itself.
Well, yeah, you know what? And I did see that firsthand, and I do agree. People often, it's like looking up to a hero or looking up to your parents. So your pastor is supposed to be a shepherd, right? So
Yeah.
you should respect your pastor, right? So people will often give that person so much credit, and sometimes it get out of hand. Sometimes I feel like it's normal and it's just due, but I think it comes down to people's personality. Some people fall all the way in and believe everything somebody say. Some people just feel like, you know what? Like if you talk about politics, people often say, I'm a Republican or Democrat, and if the president is whatever he is, if I'm affiliated, he can't do no wrong. If he says something that sounds wrong, he's still right. And some people do that. They get in the church, and no matter what happens, you believe it. And then some people are like, you know what? I believe what the president was saying because I'm whatever affiliate, and I don't believe what he's saying right here. So this, I believe is right. This, I think is wrong. So sometimes people have their own mind. Yeah, I mean, but yeah, that's literally what happened. And I understand how people felt when I got all super into church, you know.
Yeah.
It even bothered my wife a little bit because I went on a whole, I'm not cursing, I'm not clubbing. And for her kids was younger than mine, so she never really got to party that much. And now her kids was getting older where she could actually get out without her kids. And now I don't want to go at all. I used to be like, you could go, but I'm not going. And I was just like serious about it. And she's like, why would I go without you? So, you know, but that's how radical I was, you know?
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So, I guess we get try to speed it up just a little bit.
Yep.
And I guess my current beliefs, like I like to have lately, I've been having discussions with like Christians, and I kind of have discussions with a lot of different people online, off like YouTube and stuff like that. And even with my job, I work in Philadelphia. Philadelphia is like a very diverse city. And I came across everybody from Hindus to Baha'i faith, Muslims, different sects of Christianity. I've been in all these different churches, just working in. So I kind of come across a lot of different people, and it's always fascinated me. And I just kind of, just from my studies and everything, and my interactions with people, I try to keep things cordial and just try to have a discussion with people, and just kind of get my point of view on why I believe what I believe and the reasons why I believe, and just sometimes try to understand why do some other people believe. So I guess my question is to you now. I see you have the cross and stuff around your neck.
Right.
If you had to give yourself a label, or if somebody asked you what is your beliefs as far as regards to God, what would be your answer? If I had to guess, let me try to guess first before you answer. Because I told you I was going to try to see if I could guess.
Right.
I think that you probably still believe in God. You probably don't think that the church and everything is necessary for you at this point.
Okay.
I think that you once you kind of remember, when you give stuff 100% and give it your all. Once you come down for that 100%, you kind of fall back and kind of take a back seat, and it's almost like once you give it your all, and you fall back, is like you kind of, all that energy is kind of gone. It's not that exciting or anything like that. And it's almost like if somebody come up to you today, tell me, hey, come to my church. This pastor just fire. He's speaking the truth and all this stuff. You're like, oh yeah, I kind of been there, done that. I kind of like how things are with my life right now, and I'm not really that interested in let's say being a part of your church or anything like that. So my guess is, I think you still kind of believe in God. I'm not sure if you kind of believe in Jesus as God or anything like that, but I think you still believe in like a higher power. I guess you could go ahead and tell me what you believe as far as your gods and stuff.
Okay, that's pretty cool. You're 100% right. What I feel, and again, me and Lamont is going to be honest and explain our point. So the way we feel. What's up, Kanai? What you need?
I don't go in the water.
Okay.
No,
All right. So you can go back out there. Why, you want to change? All right, go ask them to let you change in the other bathroom.
Well, what am I clothes?
You what?
Right here.
Yeah, right there. There you go. Close the door. Thanks. So yeah, you're 100% right. I'm gonna get into it and kind of give it straight from my perspective and my opinion. So remember, guys, just hear me out. This is from me. I could only tell you what I believe and what I feel from where my feet walked on my life and my journey, right? So you may disagree, but just understand that I'm only giving you my perspective because my journey in life. And your journey is going to be different than mine. I did get to the point where I felt that going to church wasn't necessary. And for me, because I felt, again, Hebrews 10:25, don't forsake the assembly, right? I feel that is for people who need to grow. And I'm not saying I don't need to grow, but I felt that I went so hard. Again, I know some people are like, it was only 3.5 years, but I went so hard in 3.5 years that I got to the point where I try to do the best I can as a person. I try to be really fair. And so I still pray. And I still, when I feel like, I don't know, maybe I have bad thoughts, I pray and ask God to take them from me. But I feel that, again, it's just my walk, that a lot of going to church is more of a show. I had an analogy, and you guys are going to kill me for this, but I felt that going to church was very similar to going to the movies. You don't have to go to the movies, but you want to go to the movies because you want to see that feature presentation. Yeah. But if you stayed home and missed the movies that day, you really didn't miss that much. Now, however, I will put a little spin on it, like it's almost like also missing school, because that one day you miss school, you might also miss a good teaching that would have taught you something. But if you went the next day, somebody could have filled you in and you could have caught up. My stand on that is because most churches is really big into their Sunday service. What I feel is more important is Bible studies, because Bible study is teaching you about the Bible and teaching you about God and teaching you about Jesus and the stories and helping you actually believe into God. So people say faith is blind, which I can agree. But what made me believe in Jesus was being taught about Jesus. Now, the Sunday schools is more of this sermon that some pastors either spent the week writing, some pastors prayed to God to give me the sermon, some pastors just decided to do it that day. But it's more of their story intertwined with the Bible. And you do get taught certain stuff of the Bible, but it's not a deep dive into, hey, this is what happened and this is where we are. For instance, when I said, I want to get into the Bible, I want to read it, right? Where should I start? My old pastor said start at the JR. He said start at John and Revelations, right? Not Revelations, Romans, the JR, right? And he said, okay, read the book of John, then read the book of Romans. Because the book of John kind of teach you about like Christ, and the book of Romans kind of teach you why are you believing in Christ, right? All the principles. So I did that, and I said, now what I do? He told me do this. He said, do not go to Genesis. Me, because I'm hard-headed, I told myself, I want to be serious, so I'm going to Genesis. I want to read from the beginning to end, because people often quote the Bible and say this and that, but the Bible is a timeline. There is a beginning and there's an ending in the Bible, and I feel like people misquote things but don't realize this came before that. So where I stand at today is I believe that there is a higher power. Sometimes I doubt I have my days where I'm like, man, look at the coronavirus.
Mhm.
Dude, if God is real, I don't know, man. But that's where my faith kick in and be like, you know what? You told me, and I'm gonna ask you to bring the story up, that you brought this up to somebody you was having a debate with a believer, and you
Yeah.
was able to bring out, listen, if a God is all knowing and knows everything, why would he, and he gives you free will, but then why would he do that knowing that you're gonna go down a bad road, right? So I wanted to interject, but I said I'll wait till we do it on camera.
Okay.
What I will say that helps me have faith is the Bible also say our thoughts isn't God's thoughts, right? So what I want to believe in my faith is that God doesn't think the way we think. So we think right or wrong. If you ran a red light, you're already wrong, right? Because
Okay.
humans put up, the systems in place to say why right is right and wrong is wrong. And the Bible also say follow the laws of the land. So that's saying that if humans came up with a government, principalities, whatever you want to call it, throughout history, that you should follow it. I want to believe that God has his own way of thinking that's different from ours. God may possibly think, for whatever reason, the coronavirus has to happen and certain people have to die. Again, the Bible clearly says our thoughts is different than God's thoughts. So meaning we can't think. What we do is this. We say, this is God. I'm going to put him in my hand.
You want some pizza?
No. This is God. I'm going to put him in my hand, and I know what he's thinking. I read the Bible, and the Bible says that this is how God thinks. But I feel that's wrong. We often feel we need to walk a straight path because the Bible told me to, so that's what God must think. But I feel like God has his own thinking. This is our box you guys can see me in. Well, God is outside of our box. So we don't know what God is interpreting, what his interpretation is. We just know what he said we should do, but we don't really know why should we do this. Why, like his thoughts. We know what he wants us to walk a good path so that we could be better people. We could ultimately make it to heaven, but we don't know why he set things in place and often why he does things that's wrong. And that's what I have. That's the only thing that keeps my faith on the line, because so many things happen. And because I've been an atheist for 36 years, it gives me so many reasons to be like, man, this is some BS. Which also helps me believe I don't have to go to church. I feel I shouldn't forsake the assembly, but I feel personally for me and my wife, we put so much time in a short period of time. I know people are going to get on me, bro. You only went for 3.5 years.
Man, that's 3.5 years is not really a short period of time. That's some time in.
Well, especially for me being so hardcore. If I just went and barely went, but I went 6 months later, I was the operations manager, But I just feel like I dug deep into it, that I felt like in my path, I have to look at all the time I spent when church service was over and I stayed hours and my kids and my wife was mad. Why are we still here? We want to go home and have fun. School's tomorrow. I feel like, I hosted the 2015 New Year's bash. I remember my wife being really upset because she didn't want to go, and I forced my family to go. And when the ball dropped, my pastor kept talking through the ball. He didn't care, and they felt they was robbed out of screaming on New Year's. But I felt with all of that I did, it didn't really change who I am. Going to church all the time, never missing a day, because I personally felt I took it serious. So because I stopped cursing and clubbing, I felt these things was going to change who I am. What I realized is I still don't curse to this day. I have went to the club a couple times, and I even used to challenge that. At first, I was like, why should I stop clubbing? First of all, I got a girlfriend. Second of all, I just go to dance. I don't even drink. I don't smoke. I just go to dance. But I felt I needed to take it out of my life, because when I went, I took everybody with me. So what if something happens to somebody because I took them out? Now, I got home safe because I don't drive. They could have got drunk and crashed. I put that on my back, and I got to the point where everyone has their walk, and I'm not God. So I should be able to go and handle myself properly and tell people, like, hey, bro, if you look like you've been drinking, I could give you a ride home. If you still want to drive yourself, then I can't control people because I'm not God. So you're right. I do still believe in a God. Dude, I have my days where I'm like, man, God can't be real. Jesus can't be real. But I go back into my faith, I might have those thoughts and might walk around the whole day like, I don't want to tell people what's in my head because God can't be real. And then I have my days, most of my times, where I'm like, it got to be a God. And if something crazy happened in my life, I pray on it and hope that God is listening and God steered me the right way. So
Yeah.
So you pretty much had me to a T.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. It's like you still kind of holding on to the Bible God. Do you think you could see yourself letting go of the Bible God and just going with it's a general God? Or you think
I really can. So because I do believe in logic, and I believe that man did write the Bible, I believe that certain stories was told to men to put in there. But for many, many years, I felt that there should be, and there might be, maybe you need to look this up and you might tell me because you've really been studying religion for a while. I feel like there needs to be a Bible that's only has the words that specifically came out of Jesus' mouth or came out of somebody who said they witnessed Jesus tell me this or God told me this. I feel like there's a lot of parables, there's a lot of stuff in the Bible that's from man, like in the New Testament, that God didn't say. God didn't tell them to say that. They just felt that this is what God would want me to do. Jesus inspired me to go on this route, and I'm doing this in the name of Jesus. But Jesus never said to do that. So I often feel that I could believe in a different God because a lot of the Bible isn't coming from God. It's coming from different people. It's not coming from a lot of the Bible isn't even, they're not even quoting God or Jesus. They're just saying we're doing it in the name of God and Jesus.
Okay. I know earlier you said that when you first started going to church this time around, you didn't really believe, but you was you kind of start reading about the Bible and studying Jesus, and you said you just started believing. You said you kind of started believing. Like, did you you was believing what was stories in the Bible, or you just like that the atmosphere that the people that surround you just kind of made you feel good about yourself?
Yeah, so what I did is I felt the people, first of all, made me feel good about myself. It felt like it was a good inner circle. So I started there. Okay, I like these people. They seem cool. They had a new members dinner. We decided to be a member. We went to new members dinner. They made us feel really welcome. The pastor was very charismatic. I really liked him. I still was in the back of my head trying to make money from the church as well. So I was still like, okay, I like the people, but I'm still trying to see if I could get a come up. As I went deeper into it, I said, okay, I always had a thought that it could be a being out there that may have started the Big Bang Theory. So I could still believe in science and I could still believe in God. My issue was believing in Jesus. So it took me a while to really believe in Jesus. But yeah, I started liking the people first, then believing into God. And then I eventually, faith is what got me to believe in Jesus. My logic could tell me that there's possibly a God because what started the Big Bang, right? The chicken or the egg, right? So logic, something had to happen. So I could say, there might be a God out there, right? But somebody dying, coming back, I can't get with that. So eventually, that's when I started believing in Jesus. Again, it took me a while. Then I was like the full Christian, in Christian standards.
Okay, so do you feel like the Bible is like, other than like the parables and stuff, like the stories and everything, do you feel like that's like true? Like if you had to put like a percentage on the Bible, as far as 0% means it's completely false, and 100% means that it's 100% true.
Right.
What percentage you will put on the Bible that's actually true stories and stories that might not be true? Like, you had to bet on it, you wouldn't bet on it.
Right. So okay, so I'm gonna break this down. So I used to listen to the radio. I used to drive to and from work all the time, and I listened to this pastor. And he did state that there's some stuff like with the size of the army, some of those numbers were inaccurate. The history tells you that, right? So I'm one of those people where if you're trying to tell me a story and I can find one thing in the story that I could prove is wrong, then I could try to challenge your story because something was wrong. So I think that like the size of the armies was history shows that was inaccurate. The numbers was too big, right?
Okay.
That I just take as okay. In translation, the person who was telling the story, maybe he could have been, to him, oh my God, it was like 50 million soldiers when it was a couple tens of thousands, right? That I won't knock the Bible too much, because there is stuff that I believe is inaccurate, right? Not that it's false, but it's inaccurate. So that some of it happened. It primarily happened, but it was inaccurate, right?
You think it was
So,
exaggerated or just
I wouldn't even
inaccurate?
say that. What I want to say is we're humans. So if we go back and somebody's telling a story, remember, the Bible was written 40 years after Jesus died, right? So why'd you wait that long, first of all? In all them years, I know they was saying that every time something happened, they was writing it down. I feel like some of those stories could have definitely been exaggerated. Some of them could have been misinterpreted. The person who told the story to somebody else could have died. And he was like, we're human. Who said they wrote it down 100% as the guy told them? Now you can't go back and ask them. So, I mean, I think that's what he said. So we're going to go with it. So I'm going to say, I want to say 65% of the Bible is correct.
Okay.
And there's a good portion that I feel either I don't believe, because I just don't believe that happened, or I feel like it happened, but the way they said it didn't happen, it was inaccurate.
Okay.
So,
All right,
but but you believe 100% is false?
I don't believe that the Bible is 100% false.
Okay.
I think obviously like the dimension of cities and stuff, and some people are true. For me, when it comes to the supernatural stuff, I believe that's 100% false.
Okay.
The supernatural. I guess you could say the things that would be considered miracles. I just think those, I think some of those stories were not really meant to be true, but
Okay.
some people today, there's some people who takes everything in the Bible as far as literal.
Right.
I think some of those stories are just meant to teach a lesson or something like that, and not necessarily making it true, like Jonah and the fish, whatever.
Right.
I don't think somebody actually got swallowed by a fish and then survived in the fish for 3 days and
Right.
came out and everything. There's nothing wrong with them. I think a lot of the stories were just was kind of used as a teaching method. It's almost like when you grow up. Sometimes when you go to school, you read stories, folklore type of stories that have a meaning to it, or just to teach you some type of thing out of it. So yeah, so when it comes to the supernatural things, I just kind of completely dismiss.
Okay.
It's almost like when I look at the world today, and I kind of gauge it. If we could do some of that stuff today, if it's possible for us to do today, then I could kind of see it somewhat possible to do it back then.
But because it's no longer exists.
Yeah.
It's funny because when I started coming to MC, they had me doing bar mitzvahs, and so I remember driving with one of the guys, and I'm a black guy, right? But in their culture, they like to hire a lot of black guys that's charismatic, and they do these bar mitzvahs, right? So I had to learn a little bit about it. So the guy who was Jewish that I was working with, he actually said Jewish people believe that Jesus was pretty much just like Martin Luther King. Like, he didn't have miracles at all, but he was like a big figure, like a Martin Luther King. And I was like, wow, that's an interesting way to look at it, you know?
Yeah, I kind of, when it comes to Jesus, I think his stories probably was like exaggerated to make it bigger than what he was actually doing.
Right.
It's kind of just to promote his message, but him walking on water and doing all these things that was like kind of considered supernatural. I think they were just kind of exaggerated. And I just also I guess for somebody that is that important, for him to not write anything is kind of like suspect.
You mean,
or just I'm not saying that he didn't write anything.
Jesus not writing anything himself?
Yeah, like
you would not having his own handwriting.
Yeah, like it's his own book or anything. Like you think somebody, especially with a lot of Christians, some Christians doesn't believe he's God, but the Christians that do believe he's God, for God to be here and not have his own handwritten book is just kind of put a little doubts
I never looked at it
about
like
me.
that.
Because if you think about it, out of all the people in the Bible, Jesus is the most recognized out of everybody. And other people got books, but Jesus. And
Didn't look at it like that.
and the way you kind of, when you read the different stories in the Bible about Jesus, and you know that the books were written after he died. So a lot of the authors wasn't even there when all this stuff happened. And it's kind of, when you think about it, like, say, for example, when Jesus was went to the mountain, he was like fasting, and the devil came up, and he was going back and forth with the devil. I just kind of, I guess it's kind of hard for me to come down. Jesus came down like, hey, guess what, guys? I was up there with the mountain with the devil, and such and such happened, and all this stuff or whatever. And people's looking at it like, oh, really? So the devil was up there with you or whatever. It just, like, some of the stories that when you read it out of the Bible, it doesn't, there's no explanation. It's like this, okay, Jesus came down and said, hey, told everybody what happened to him. There's no explanation as you kind of just kind of move along.
Right.
And
So,
and I think like his speeches, I know a lot of people said that they do a lot of oral traditions and stuff like that, but just like, how accurate are these words of Jesus? Did he actually say these words the same exact way? Like, if somebody asked me to go back during our conversation that we just doing on this stream,
right.
I probably would not be able to quote you word for word.
True.
Even if I'm just kind of hurry up trying to write it down, would be kind of hard to keep up and stuff like that. And just to think about it, they probably wasn't using no pencil or using anything to write it down when he was making these speeches.
Right.
So I think, to me, I think a lot of the stories regarding Jesus was just kind of exaggerated. I think there more than likely was a guy going around preaching something, but I don't think it was supernatural or anything like that. It's almost like I grew up in an age before there was the internet, and I just remember when I was in school, elementary school, you hear something that's kind of crazy, and you just kind of had to take somebody's word for it, because there's really no way for us to kind of go back and fact check it, and it's either you believe it or you don't. And back then, I kind of believed a lot of stuff that I probably shouldn't have, because there was a lot of ignorance going back then. There was, and just people saying, oh, I got a cousin who's seen somebody, whatever. It never was something firsthand, whatever, that I seen this. It was always somebody that they know that seen this, whatever. Right. You just either take somebody's word for it, and especially if somebody that seemed credible. What I learned just from studying religion and beliefs, when I got kind of deep into the Bible, and I was trying to tell my friends and family about all the stuff I learned, a lot of people wasn't really interested in what I had to say about the Bible. They was like, I got my beliefs, whatever. You kind of, that works for you. You kind of, go with it. Right. And I also learned that the people you think that know a lot don't really know a lot. Right. So
I think people are human. So there's people who are into church. Like, I remember when I was young and I didn't believe in God at all. And the people who didn't go, people who didn't go to church, who used to go to church, I grew up hearing this, and when I say it, you'll hear it, is that I don't believe in organized religion. I never knew what that meant until I started going to church and stopped going to church. So church is an organization, and it's people coming together believing into a religion, but it's an organization, right? Yeah. And so I realized where my stance is, I don't believe in organized religion, meaning I don't. So I feel like church is necessary for your growth. It's good to be with like-minded people, but the whole thing is to go to church and absorb what you can, so that when you walk out those doors, you are the same person you was in there. So people, I feel like, go to church, praise and worship, and then when they leave, mother effer, but it's like, go and absorb yourself so that when you can literally take church, like my old pastor used to say, you could really feel God in here, right? And I used to be like, you could feel God in here. Ain't God at my house? But when you think about it, some people don't act like God is at their house. They act like God's at church when they're at church. So my whole thing is, I don't feel it's necessary for me to go to church with other people because I took it serious enough, and I still take it serious, that it's in my actions, it's in my words, and it's in my thoughts. Now, I'm human, so I'm still going to have my moments where, I don't know, I'm going to do something not Christian-like or not God-like or whatever, but for the most part, I allowed it to change who I am. So I'm not telling anybody they shouldn't go to church. I'm not telling anybody that church isn't important, but I do feel they get to come a point in time where you have to realize if you're going to church and it's just you going because you're going and sitting down and listening, and then you leave and you're acting different than you was when you was there, you need to go to church or need to really soak it in or whatever. You need to take it serious and allow it to not be on the surface, but allow it to be deep into you. What I will say is, I remember when I didn't believe in God years before I started going to church, I spent money on this expensive Bible because I thought I was going to teach myself. This girl at my old job, mom used to sell Bibles. Said, give me one on Bible. I spent like $54, right, on this Bible. And I told myself I was going to read Genesis. And that was one of the worst things because just reading it on my own, dude, the Genesis, again, has some of the craziest stories. And I barely got halfway through Genesis. I was like, nope, this is the dumbest thing I heard. And I can't believe in this because it just makes no sense. This is fiction. To jump on my conspiracy theory when I doubt is that, let's just say God was real, all right? Okay. Let's say Jesus was real. But remember, the Bible ends with God leaving, and God gave us, remember, when the Old Testament ends, God left for 400 years, right? So 400 years, the Bible says nobody heard from God. So it's like, wow, God left. So what does that mean? God left us. God decided he wanted to be around. Was God still watching us? Was God still with us? God just decided to no longer speak to any people at all. Nobody was worthy to be spoken to. So then Jesus came along. So at the end of the Bible, it says that God again left. Like technically now, God really isn't here. He's just through Jesus, he's in us, right? If you're a Christian. So my conspiracy was, if all of that was real, right? 100%, 95%, what if God really is gone? And Jesus did die. And Jesus is only in us through the Bible that we read to teach us what he would want us, our walk to be like. He would want us to be nice to our neighbors. He would want us to be, good to people. He would want us to do all these things, but God really did leave, and we're really on our own. But that's why we need to go to church, so we can learn what, I feel like, what if the Bible is only knowledge, right? That it isn't spiritual anymore. It's 0% spiritual. You ain't praying and God is hearing it because God left the building. But that the Bible is just knowledge, and you're supposed to read it, believe in it, to follow it, so that you will live a good life and then meet God after you die. That'd be kind of deep, right?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Look, I feel like we could kind of keep going on and on, but I think we probably should start wrapping up a little bit. But I have a question.
Okay.
Can we put the arrow on?
Sure.
What would it take for you to change your opinion on God, to not believe in any gods?
Oh, so what would it take for me to not believe in God?
Yeah.
I don't know, because faith is blind, and because I have that blind faith, because I'm a fair person, so I even side with the bully, right? So why is this kid going to school beating up on people, right? So no one cares about the bully and why he's doing it. They just feel bad for the people he's doing it to. I always had the mindset of like, well, in your story, the bully is the villain, but in the bully story, he might get beat up by his dad or uncle, and there's a villain, and he's the good guy, right? He's just lashing out. So it would be hard for me to not believe in God, because I watched my grandma suffer when she died for 2 weeks, right? And I went to see her every day for 2 weeks. That was hard. And I questioned, why is there a God? I don't know. I guess for me to 100% be like, nope, it's not a God, I don't even know what it would take, because I always feel that, or I can see the most devastating thing, millions of people die, but I still believe that our thoughts, I don't know why people don't bring this up, But the Bible clearly says that our thoughts isn't God's thoughts. So we don't think like God. So in a weird way, if I'm giving God, it's a loophole, right? So I feel like,
is an out. Yeah.
yeah, I feel like
almost,
here's what put the smoking gun, right? If you're not a believer, the fact that the Bible said God is omnipotent, meaning he knows everything, then it makes no sense if he knew that you were gonna die, and he still allowed you. All right, let's make it worse. It makes no sense that he knew your baby was gonna get die in a car crash. Like, what? God let that happen? Now, if the Bible said God doesn't know everything, he only knows from here and as it go on, then you'd be like, well, God didn't know that was going to happen.
mm-hmm.
So I get that. But for me, giving God a loophole and a way out of it is that our thoughts isn't God's thoughts. And so we could sit here saying, well, the Bible says God said this, so why would God ever do that? If you read the Bible, then you will know that God's the great God. He's a good God. He's a just God. He would never do that. But no, because the Bible said our thoughts isn't God's thoughts. So therefore, we don't know why God allowed bad things to happen. You can't take God out of the Bible and put him in your hands like you telling God, really, God, you did that? You gonna allow that? No, God is above us. So I don't know. That right there always bring me back when I think of the crazy stuff like, bro, there can't be a God. But then I think, I can't say I know why God did that. Humanly, I feel like if I was a God, I would have never let that happen. But I don't know how God thinks. I believe God thinks on a whole different plane that we think on. Where we wake up, that's wrong. Like, for instance, look at humans. This is how silly we are. Once upon a time, alcohol was illegal. Now, alcohol is legal. Once upon a time, in many places it is, weed is illegal. Now we make it legal. I feel like, so that was something that was really bad and dangerous. And the years go on now, because humans, we say it's okay. People lost their jobs, right? Because of COVID. But guess what? Weed was still legal because it's considered essential. A couple years ago, weed was illegal. So why do we, if we could change our mind, why does God have to think like us? Again, one thing I felt like, you meet a lot of people and they say God never changes their mind. My old assistant pastor, I remember him saying that in the men's group. And I was like, okay, I'm learning about God. So if God said it in the Bible, it never changed. But I actually looked this up. There's many places in the Bible where God actually changed his mind. I'm like, yeah, I don't think people realize that. But if you look up Lazarus, not Lazarus, Ezekiel, like he literally, God changed his mind when he was supposed to die. God decided, you know what? And literally, I'm going to allow you to live longer, change his mind. So what I'm saying is, I don't know what it would take for me to not fully believe, because I have my loophole for God to kind of let God get away with.
But if you kind of think of your loophole, it's almost like I think it's a while back when I was on Facebook, we was talking about making up our own religion or something, or own God. It's almost like if we had to write a book and we had to write something in the book to give a loophole for our God. So, I mean, somebody that you don't know probably got challenged, possibly could have got challenged and say, and put that in as a loophole. And it's like you're kind of basing it off somebody that you don't really know who wrote that, and saying that's one of God's attributes, that he knows things that we can't comprehend.
Right. Well, he thinks differently than we think.
Yeah, he thinks differently than us. And that's kind of almost, to me, that's almost kind of like it's like you said, it's like a loophole.
Right.
There's like something that you can't find out, you can never find out.
Right, you never. It's fake.
Unless a guy come down and says, hey, you can't really understand my thoughts. But it just seemed like there's no way for you to falsify that belief.
Yeah, so being that I read the Bible, I feel like on my walk in life, I don't remember many people, like when there's discussions and arguments, nobody brings that up. When I read that, I was like, that was deep to me. Like when I read the Bible, I took notes. So if I showed you my phone, I did the Old Testament, New Testament, and my notes are, hundreds of things that when I read it, I was like, what? Like crazy stories, like in Genesis, they cut up this one guy's daughter and sent her pieces all over to show that the people who raped and killed her, the good people cut her up and sent her body parts around to get everybody to want to rally against them. Crazy story. But when I read that God doesn't think the way we think, I don't even know how a lot of Christians don't use that because that's a loophole. Now, if you think of the Da Vinci Code, I remember not realizing until I watched that movie that they said that there was a point in time where a bunch of people came together to write the Bible. And remember, the Bible has 66 books, but there was a longer Bible. The Catholic Bible is longer. So it's like, how is there a Bible that has less and a Bible that has more? Well, that tell you that some people felt that was important, that wasn't. So to your point, if somebody did write it, I feel like, again, people don't think about the part of God don't think the way you think. But for me, reading it all, that is the biggest loophole, because whenever if you challenge me, because I you're really good with this, but as a Christian, and again, to be honest, I guess I never said this, I don't consider myself a Christian. I just consider myself, I believe that God is, I primarily believe that God and Jesus is real. I have my days where I'm like, maybe Jesus isn't, but I believe something started this world, right?
Yeah.
So I don't call myself a Christian anymore, because I don't feel that I have that same walk that Christians do. I doubt so much that I have my blind faith that God is real, but I doubt so much that I feel like I wouldn't feel good calling myself a Christian, because I don't believe the way Christians believe on everything, because I was an atheist for so long. So when I sit down and hear Christians talking, I'm like, in my head, like, nah, I feel you. And then on my other side, I'm like, I don't know if I kind of believe in that. So how can I be a Christian if I doubt so much? I have my days where I doubt so much. I won't call myself a Christian, but I call myself a believer. And when I pray, I sometimes have problems praying to Jesus. I sometimes have to say, no, I'm gonna pray to Jesus, because the Bible tells you, Christian Bible, that you're not even supposed to pray to God. You're supposed to pray to Jesus. You come through me to get to the Father. But I feel like, well, what if Jesus isn't real? Then God should know I really am trying to pray to him. But what if he's like a vindictive God of the Old Testament, and be like, dude, you ain't even praying to me, so I'm not even gonna honor that prayer. So I often pray I literally will pray to Jesus and make sure I also say God. So a Christian would be like, dude, you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to wholeheartedly have faith that Jesus, through Jesus, is the Father. So I don't call myself a Christian.
Okay.
To be fair.
Yeah. Yes, that's pretty interesting. I guess I have like a lot of these questions. I think we probably gonna have to do another show, because I got questions about prayer and how do you feel like prayer works and stuff like that.
I mean, real quick.
Sure.
So I was taught that when you pray, certain prayers don't make it to God. So that's how I was taught. It don't enter the throne room. So certain, like, if you're not really into it, if you're kind of BSing, if you're not really passionate about it, that some prayers don't make it. That's why coming together and praying together about the same subject matter, those prayers, you can help those prayers make it to God.
So I guess my question, I know prayers are people pray for different reasons.
Right.
Sometimes people pray for other people. Sometimes people pray to make something happen or to stop something from happening.
Right.
And I guess in those situations, it's almost like how some Christians or some believers that believe that God doesn't change. I guess that I kind of have problems understanding with prayer is, if God is all knowing and all powerful.
I knew you were going to go with this.
What's the whole point of prayer? Like, if God knows that you don't have money for your rent and you pay your bills, shouldn't he say, okay, Anthony, I've been watching, I know everything. Before you was born, I knew that you was not going to have a job, or you're going to be not going to have your rent money, wherever the case may be. When you get to this point, you don't even have to pray. I'm just going to have a check sent to you in the mail, whatever the case may be. Right. It's almost like, go ahead.
Here's my answer to that. You got children, and you actually have a child who's an adult, right? So she moved, and she doesn't live with you now, right? But she's in college?
She lives in North Carolina.
Okay. So if she lived with you now, knowing that she don't have a job, you would allow her to get a chance to get a job, and then you would probably charge her rent, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the basis of that rent is showing commitment that she actually she's a part of the home. She's a part of your ecosystem in your house, right? So I feel that as a person, my kids ain't living here for free. I'm just not giving a handout. So I feel like prayer is commitment. Yes, I know my kids need a place to stay, right? Yes, I know my kids, I should help them out. I know that, but it's like I told my youngest daughter, like my older kids are older. I only got one kid that I need to pay for. I will splurge, spoil you. I never had a lot of money when I had older kids. Now in life, I have a lot of, I could treat her to whatever. You want this? Fine. But guess what? Your grades got to be good and you got to have a good attitude. So in order for me to splurge and give her things because I know she want them and I know she need them, you're going to have to show your commitment that you deserve them. Now, Christians might not want to use the word deserve, like God feel we deserve something, but I feel prayer is yes, God know you need this job, but am I just going to give it to you? Like we could go the good and evil route, right? So the bad guy need a job too, and he don't want to pray. Should God just give it to him? No, where's your commitment that I should do this for you? Because if I'm God and the Bible says you should walk a certain way, then prayer to me is your commitment that God should help you out,
Okay,
It's fair
so
to me, but I'm a fair person. We want God to be, because God is the good God, that God just know I need this Galaxy Fold that costs $19.80, almost $2,000. So God know I need it, and I shouldn't do nothing to get it. I don't look at God like that. Because I look at society as that. I don't want my kids growing up thinking they're privileged. So I'm not just going to give my kids something. Like the other day we went to a friend's house and my wife's daughter wanted to stay the night. So she thought she was slick and just waited late and asked her friend's mom, hey, ask my mom, could you spend the night? So her friend's mom asked, hey, could she stay the night? She was like, okay. Now she never had that conversation with her daughter. So her daughter just assumed, all right, I'm staying the night. At the end of the night, she came down. She said, hey, why you didn't ask me to spend the night? She was like, what? She's like, no, yeah, you're not. You're going home. She's like, but, no, it ain't but. Because you need to, I don't have a problem with you staying the night, but you need to at least ask me, could you stay the night? She knew that she wanted to stay the night, but she didn't ask, can she stay the night? So therefore, she didn't get it. So that's just a, prayer, I feel like is a commitment. Like, you might need something, I know it, but you didn't even ask me. Like, come on. That's just one way to look at it.
yeah, I understand how you look at it that way, but I think it's hard to have like an analogy with God because, especially if you define God as being all powerful and all knowing, and you as a person, you could do stuff for your kids, but you're limited what you could do.
Right.
If your kids is dying from cancer or about to get hit by a bus, and you're not close enough to pull them out of the way,
right?
But you had the power to save them, I'm pretty sure you would do whatever you can to save them.
Right, if you were God, which you're not.
Yeah. So there's like limits to what you can do, what you can actually do, and according to people who believe in God and that type of God, there's no limits for that God.
So here's the problem: the people that you're talking to, they don't know my loophole. They apparently skipped that part of the Bible. That ain't gonna work on me. Hey, trust me. I literally, I'm telling you, if I show you my notes, dude, I took so many notes. We gotta get together one day. But I took all the crazy stuff I heard, the crazy stories. I really hit on it like, what? And when that simply says that, so they don't use that loophole. Now I'm not saying, I mean, listen, if we both don't believe in God and we believe that somebody wrote this and they wrote a loophole, bro, that's a loophole. Because at the end of the day, well, I can't save my kid. I was out of the country. God could have stepped in. God think differently than maybe God don't think your kid needed to be saved. Maybe your kid was going to be the Antichrist. I don't know. But God don't think the way we think. We can't assume that God should do what we would do. We're not God. Like we said, we're limited. God is all-knowing. So guess what? God know what we don't know. We want our kids to live, but we don't know what God knows. I mean, I mean, the Bible says it. I didn't make it up.
Yeah, I understand. I understand. You're just using what you got. But I guess it still boils down to me, if this God is if this God knew before me and you was born that we was going to be sitting here and having this conversation.
Right.
And he knows that you're like a true believer in
Right.
him, and he knows that I wasn't going to be a true believer in him. And something that's out of your control happens to you, and he has the power to not allow it to happen. But I mean, that's your whole loophole thing.
Yeah, I was about to say, because at the end of the day, we grew up believing right is wrong. So if I touch my light bulb, I'm gonna get burned, right? If I put my glasses on, I can see better, right? That's just makes sense to us. We believe in what seeing is believing. So think about it. Seeing is believing, right? But God is the God that's what he believes and thinks. The Bible says is not what we do. So because earthly realm and what we like, think about it. We could have grew up in a society, and there might be societies out there that raise people to believe that if your kid died because of a bus ran them over, I'm going extreme here, that wasn't bad. That your kid was going to be reincarnated into that your kid was going to be I'm just making this up, that your kid was going to be a terrible person, so that anyone who dies before, let's say 18, that means that they're going to be the moment they die, another baby's going to be born somewhere in the world, and they're going to be a better person. So imagine in that society, we don't have to blame God and feel like God, I wasn't there, God could have stopped them. For them, they'd be like, that's not God's fault. That was a blessing. If my kid died before 18, he was blessed, because he's going to come back as somebody better. So we could go on a tangent, but we don't know how God thinks.
Yeah, I mean, there's many beliefs. A lot of people got their own personal God,
right,
that pretty much thinks like themselves,
right,
and stuff like that. So that's why it's always good to kind of talk to somebody and find out what they think God can and cannot do.
Yeah, God's limitations, God, for what they believe. Now, I think the hard thing is, I want to say most, could be wrong. I feel like most Christians don't read the Bible. Most Christians believe in organized religion and don't know that's what they believe in. Most Christians go to church and just attend church, and they're so into their pastor that their pastor becomes their God. Their pastor is their shepherd. They believe so much into what their pastor believes that that's their belief. So they only open themselves up to whatever the pastor end up conveying to them. Again, I don't know how long you have to go to a church and attend Sunday service and Bible study for eventually the pastor would have broke down the whole Bible to you. But then how much are you taking in? When you try to read it for yourself and actually take notes, you could absorb it better than if you just sit there and you're hearing somebody else tell it to you. I guess everybody have their own way of learning. So I can't, let me not go there so much, but you see what I'm saying.
I think if I just went strictly to church, from a kid until now, I don't think the pastor would have went through the whole Bible, because they always put their extra spin on it and try to like intervene it with current events or where the case may be.
Right. And again, that's why I feel Bible study is more important than Sunday school, because the world is the world. So it's hard for a pastor not to give a sermon without throwing the world in there and then mix it in the Bible, which makes it relative and relatable. But I feel like people really need Bible study, because if you really want me to be armed as a Christian, then I need to know the Bible, because I need to know what I'm believing in. I feel that's fair. Don't have me believe in God based off of how you explain God to me. Say, listen, you need to take it upon yourself. I need to teach you the Bible so that you can know what you're believing in. Like, it's foolish to say I believe in God and Jesus, but I technically never heard everything. So I really don't fully believe, right? Yeah. Me hearing that story in Genesis where the person got cut up might be the difference between me believing in God or not. So it's kind of like if you start dating a girl and she was married but didn't tell you, and she broke up with her husband and everything, she just was ashamed to tell you that she was still legally married, right? Yeah. You go propose to her and want to pick out the wedding date, now she got to tell you that she's married. You're like, dude, if you would have told me that, maybe I wouldn't have been with you. But I felt like if I told you that, you wouldn't have dated me. But you're robbing me of being with you or not. You don't know if I would have been with you or not. You took that away from me. So by having someone say, I believe in God, and they didn't fully believe in the Bible, that kind of like they don't really know what they're believing in, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah, you make a pretty good point there.
Yeah.
I do think that I kind of agree. I think there's the most of the Christians that I know from my family members and stuff, I don't think they are very well versed in the Bible.
Right.
I think everybody have their favorite passages in the Bible that they know and kind of go to, but not everybody like did any research,
Right.
looked in history and studied where all this stuff came from. It is a lot of stuff that just kind of everybody's kind of just got kind of brought up into it, and this is what they were kind of taught to believe.
Yeah.
And a lot of people just don't question or don't even have the urge to question their beliefs. They just they're okay living in their world. But I think for certain people, is that just not good enough.
Right.
For me, for my beliefs, I try to give good reasons for my beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't have a good reasons, then I have to debate with myself whether I should continue to hold that belief.
So let me ask you
think,
this. Sorry to cut you off, because real quick, I want to know, and I know you can't be on here all day. You said you are an atheist, so do you believe in the Big Bang? So what do you believe?
I do accept the science and what they say about science with the Big Bang and evolution. What happened before that? I mean, I have no idea. Only could speculate, just pretty much just about with everybody else. So for the most part, I kind of look at as us being here is almost like a miracle itself, because all these planets that we know of currently, there's no life of other than us as far as we know.
Right.
But I don't think that there has to be a superpower being that created everything.
Right.
I think some stuff just could happen naturally somehow without a God. And I think the way I kind of look at this world, I kind of look at the world that there is no God. Just looking at stuff that goes on. There's no good God. What I'm trying to say. I think it could be a possibility that there could be a God that just don't care. It could be something that could have made something and just walked away and just didn't care. But in order for me to believe in that type of God, I would have to have some good reason to believe that, other than just saying that there has to be something.
I got you. So for you, let me try to figure out your disbelief. Do you feel that there's so many things that happen that if there was a God that was all-knowing and supposed to be a good God, that it kind of disproves there's a God because too many bad things have happened in order for it to make sense for there to be a God? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I kind of, that all-powerful, all-knowing type of God, I reject that God completely. I know there's some Christians that do reject that God. There's some Christians that do believe that God don't know everything. And for me, the way I look at it is, if I'm all powerful and I know everything, I could have came up with a better world than this, if they had the power. So yeah, so that's for the most part. And I guess to answer the question I asked you, what would change my stance or my beliefs? I don't think it had to be even something too crazy, but if there's like evidence to show that one religion beliefs works more than other, say for example, if Christians, every time they pray or whatever, majority of the time something good happens. Or say for example, Muslims never get sick. That would kind of raise my eyebrow when we kind of look into it. I guess it doesn't really necessarily have to be some kind of supernatural, but just something that's just not regular. Like, say, for example, Buddhists live long lives and they don't never die or something like that until they turn 72 or something. It'd be something to kind of look into. But if everybody is like on the same page, like I don't believe, but I could get cancer and die tomorrow, or you could get cancer, or whatever the case, you get hit by a car or accident. Like if all these beliefs I see that everybody, no matter what happens, everybody pretty much same thing kind of happens to them at the end of the day. So me kind of putting faith in one particular God and without really good evidence other than just you wanting to believe real bad. It's just it's kind of hard for me to do something like that. I don't think I would ever be able to do something like that.
Well, I think what's hard is the Bible has so many things, right? And you could take things in the Bible and try to apply it and make it make sense. So you said if people are dying and stuff, and it's kind of like, what? Well, the book of Isaiah, I believe is Isaiah chapter 57, verses 1 through 7, says, and once I learned this, I use it at a lot of funerals. So 57, 1 through 7 says, God knows that people are suffering. So it says, people don't know and don't care. It actually says why people die or are taken soon. Why the godly or people die or are taken away soon. But God knew and knows what they were going through, like they're suffering. So God didn't want them to suffer anymore. So the guy with cancer, whatever, if you're a believer, if you're a Christian, somebody could read Isaiah 57, 1 through 2. That's why it happened. Somebody could take, the Bible says that God, after he flooded the world, or one of the punishments was that humans wouldn't live past 120. So then, if you want, on the other hand, you could go start looking up whoever lived past 120, because then that would mean that was the Bible lying, right? So it's stuff like that where people could take for good in the Bible and people could take for bad or to try to disprove it. So I get your point, because humanly, our thought process, some stuff just don't make sense, you know, if you went on how we think.
Yeah.
So I get that, you know.
Wait, there's all those.
Yeah. So I think we probably should just wrap it up for now.
Yep.
I guess when you put the video out, if anybody have questions or something, maybe we could do a follow-up video.
Yeah.
And answer people questions. I think I could probably keep going on and on and on, but I have to kind of get ready to go, get back to the family.
Well, I think it was really good. I think we really covered and touched so much, and it's definitely more to touch, but I think we touched and covered like big stuff. So it's kind of cool because whoever watched this, they could get to see, like, you know, we pretty much touched those hot topics. But yeah, like Mont said, we definitely would, you know, do a follow-up video. You guys, please comment. Let us know if anything you want to hear from both of us, you know.
Yeah, or if you have any questions or anything, you know, feel free. And I definitely I definitely have a lot more questions, and I definitely need to try to do this again.
Yeah. And guys, remember, you don't have to wait for another video. If you comment below, we will respond to your comments. So as soon as the comments come in, we'll read them and we'll comment below. So just please comment. You know, but guys, this is the first episode of So Let's Talk. Want to once again thank Lamont for being on here. I hope I could persuade him to me and him do some type of show where it's Lamont and Anthony show something. But because I love your perspective, love your view. You're a really good speaker. You're a likable character. So I feel like you're a person that people would like to hear from. You're very knowledgeable, and people could tell, like, you're like me, I'm like, you're straight and direct, and I feel like some people would like to see some, like, you know, hear someone like you speaking about certain subjects. So
sure.
You know,
it sounds good.
Putting that out there to guilt trip you. So, but guys, thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Also, if you have a business, you have something you do, something you want to promote, let me know, because I'll make a So Let's Talk episode just on whatever you do and give you your credit, let you speak about it. It don't have to be this long. It could be a 10-minute episode, but you just talking about your business or your whatever you do, and you know, put it out to the world. You know, this is just a way to get extra eyes on whatever you do. So with that said, thank you so much. We appreciate you. And now your mama knows.
Thank you for watching the video. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And now, your mama knows.